as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are live this morning with a little special edition of Just Joshing. So I was hoping my guest would be in slightly calmer waters this morning, but that is not the case. So I don't have any context for it. My grandmother does have some context for it. She was born in Malta during World War II. So in World War II, Malta was heavily contested. So she spent the majority of her childhood till she was like 4 or 5 years old inside caves because of all the bombs that would happen in there. So family history, there's kind of it, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I'm in Canada. I mean, there's like, I'm not even living in the States right now. There's nothing close to a context of what's going on over there. So I'm just going to say it here. My condolences. Now, on the flip side, if things really do go where you guys see your family, I've been held hostage on this show live by a 3-year-old. Now, it's not quite the same thing. But I've learned the roll with the punches. Not as well as you guys have, but I've learned the roll with the punches. So, I mean, if I just hope your husband and son or daughter, I'm sorry.
I only have one daughter home. Nobody else is home. It's
Okay.
My dog has a really, she really doesn't do well with rocket attacks. And she knows before they come, she has better hearing than we do, obviously. So she often alerts us, and she shakes really badly.
You know, I can't blame your dog. I'm not gonna lie. I can't really blame your dog. It's like, it's not something I think most people really want to. Like I said this off the air. I mean, I'm not even saying this. Like I'm glad it's not me, and I say this kind of selfishly, but also I like nobody should have to go through this.
No. Where are you in Canada? Sorry, where are you?
I'm currently in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and
okay.
Yeah. Currently, I have a master plan of going on the road like early next year. Actually, later on this afternoon, my afternoon, your evening. Hopefully, everything will be hunky dory for you guys in the evening. But hopefully, like I said, I mean, nothing lasts forever. That's basically kind of the hope. So I'm hoping this is a short.
We've been through this before, yeah. We've been through this several times.
Yeah, it's I'm not going to say normal is the right word, but it's not unheard of, unfortunately not. So
no, that's why my house has a bomb shelter, right?
Exactly. Well, exactly. I mean, like I said, and Canada doesn't have that, has never experienced anything remotely close to that. So it's like, no. I mean, we got really cold weather here, but that, again, that's just different. Like, we're insane for different reasons. Right?
I'm from Ottawa originally, so.
Oh, okay.
I know all about the cold weather. I'm actually like 4th generation Canadian on my mother's side, so I know all about the cold. I've lived in Winnipeg. I've lived in Vancouver. Calgary, no. I actually haven't been to Calgary, but.
Well, you lived in Winnipeg, which is like the one city colder than Calgary.
Yeah, I lived there for a year. I've been to Edmonton and Saskatoon even.
Yeah.
But Calgary, no, obviously Toronto and Montreal, because they're pretty close to Ottawa. But Calgary is actually one Canadian city I haven't been to.
So I've been as far east as Kingston, Ontario, as far west as I've seen the whole country, pretty much west. Like every province, I've seen something of it. As far north as been as Edmonton, as far but west I've gone all the way to the island, Alert Bay in British Columbia is as far as I've been. But like I said, you still got me beat at least for now on the traveling part. You don't mind my asking?
No, I lived in Johannesburg also.
Yeah,
there for a year in South Africa.
So if you don't mind my asking. Just out of curiosity, like what I know what motivates my travel lust. What motivated yours?
Originally, I think I had done I think they've changed the name of it a little bit, but in those days I was doing a Bachelor of Journalism at Carleton University, and that's a 4-year program. And after 3 years, I think I was just going crazy. I just had to get out of that city. It just felt very kind of claustrophobic, but don't know if you've ever been to Ottawa. It's a pretty little city, but there isn't.
Yeah, no, Ottawa's a straight. Like honestly, as Canadian cities go, Ottawa to me is a little strange because it
Really,
feels like three different cities. Depending
really,
on where you live in the city, it feels like three. There's the parliamentary downtown part of the city,
right.
which is to its credit. To its credit, maybe its detriment considering what's happened in the last few years there. It's very government run. Like it's very you can feel the government's influence in that section of the city very much. Then you get past that, and it's almost like it's suburbia, like Ottawa, like in like the second city is suburbia Canada. In suburbia Canada, pretty much everywhere you go is the same. Like there's little differences, but honestly, it's the same. Then then Ottawa also's got like small town something at the edge of the city. Like I went to a conference there a few years back, and I just thought like just for last night because I had some time waiting for my flight. I explored the city. It's like so I went from downtown to suburbia to outskirts where the airport is. And I'm looking at the outskirts. I'm like, how are you part of this city? How is Parliament part of this city? Like it is such a dichotomy, but also very the other big impression I got from Ottawa was it's very it's very small. It's very set in its ways, good, bad, or indifferent. It's very set in its ways. And if you're someone that's been through it, I could see someone wanting to leave. Like I could see it, right?
So yeah, so that was I just wanted to go somewhere else, but I didn't have really money to go off, and I still had this fourth year kind of hanging over my head, like who does that, right? You don't want to do 3 years and then leave before you finish. Like you're finally gonna finish. But I knew I wasn't. I'm not that type of person. I knew I was gonna finish the degree. So at that time, um, Israel was a place I could go to because it was easy to get scholarships as a Jewish Canadian. It was pretty easy for me to get scholarships to go and study there. So it was really a lot, to be honest, financially motivated because I could go
Sure.
there very little, but it could be this really, and this was different. This was the early 90s. It was kind of a Oslo peace process was really at its height and peace was really in the air and people really felt that like this was it. This is very early 90s before Rabin was assassinated,
Yep.
obviously. And people felt like this is it. This is going to be the new Middle East. This is going to be peace. This is all going to change. And I wanted to see that. So I got a scholarship to study at Middle Eastern Studies in Haifa, and I went to live with Palestinian roommates and Druze roommates and Israeli roommates, and it was a very kind of euphoric atmosphere at the time. Obviously, we're sitting here under rocket attack, so it didn't go the way
Didn't
everybody thought
progress
it was
away
going to go at the time. But that was the mood, especially among young people and university students at the time, and I wanted to see it. So that's originally, and then when you know how it is, once you start traveling, right, you want to go everywhere, right? You want to go to Turkey, and you want to go to Greece, and you just want to go all over the place.
Well, yeah, because your mind's expanded. I moved around a lot a as an individual, as a just someone. I've moved like I lived in both Canada and the United States, and it's fascinating how everything's so different. Even just that, I go like yours is another level because um, I know this because culture's different, food's different, right? Just I mean, but in some ways, it's the exact same thing too. It's amazing how universal human nature really is. But it's fascinating to see which parts are, for lack of a better term, important for each place you go to, right? Not and obviously not everything is not everything fits you. Like I came back here, and one of the things I realized like now it doesn't fit me anymore. So I don't know where I fit. So I'm going to try and find it. And that's kind of like the next, who knows, right? this is probably my midlife crisis, quote unquote, right? And if that's my midlife crisis, I'm good with it. But it's about finding where you fit, and I mean, we all find that at whatever point we're ready to find that, right? You I mean, I could look at your fourth year in a slightly more positive light. Like, you realized you weren't happy, right? And a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I just got to grin and bear it." But as I've gotten older, I have like 12 rules of success. One of them is don't quit. I've actually want to modify the rule. Don't quit when it's hard. Quit when it sucks.
Right.
You realized it sucked. So I just can't do it. I can't do it. You found a way to get your fourth year elsewhere, which is a kudos to you. But it sounds like you were chasing your happiness. And that's not, I don't think that's ever a bad thing. Would that more people did that?
Well, I did come back and finish. I didn't. I said that I would, and yeah, of course. You're always going. It's very easy to find people to give you the 50 reasons why you can't do this. You can't do this because people who leave their degrees in the middle never finish, because you won't come back, because you won't graduate with your class. You're gonna find those 50 people. If you could find one to tell you why you can do something, then you're already in good, you're in good company. It's very easy to tell people they can't do things, right? Because it's always practical and sensible. Oh, yeah. And that's mostly what I got. But I was just like, I had to get out of there. Like I said, it was just, I think you summed it up pretty well. You feel like you can't breathe there after a while. I felt like I couldn't breathe after a while. It was too, like you said, very much the same. Everybody seemed in those days to want to just I don't know. I'm not making, but just get a government job seemed like everyone's dream. It was always just like, if you work for the government, you're gonna have all your benefits and all your pension, and I was just like, this is it. Like, this is the dream. Like, this is, and it was. Maybe it still is, but it was like this. It was a really big ambition for people,
Well,
and I was
it kind of still is. I mean, let's be honest. Like, if you're looking at strictly put from a security perspective, purely security, nothing resembling humanity, but just purely security. Government job, it actually is as good as you can get. Look, I'm still the majority of my money comes from freelancing, but I still have a side gig. So I work for the Flames. There's somebody that I work with in the department. She works for a golf course for the city. What she gets paid for that golf course is batshit insane for what she does. It's batshit insane. I mean, that the figure is crazy. So there is a part of me, it's like, yeah, it's the dream. But I mean, here's the thing. So I grew up in Windsor, Ontario, Oshawa, Ontario. I lived in London, Ontario. Don't for that one, just don't. But I mean, she's laughing because she knows what I'm talking about, right? And why I say that is this: like, a lot of people want to go, I'm going to get this job, and I'm going to be all set and secure. By the way, and folks, before we continue, I'm just going to emphasize this: if you find something that genuinely makes you happy, then you can ignore everything I'm about to say. Right, because if you're genuinely happy, there's nothing to say. If you're happy, you're happy. That's all there is to it. But if you're not happy, you're like, well, this is the smart play. Is it? I know lots of people who do this, the quote unquote smart play. You know what I notice? They're on various forms of alcohol or some kind of. They're looking for something to fill that hole in life. Yes, they're secure. They don't have to worry. They don't have money problems. They have other problems. They have life problems. And honestly, speaking as someone who's chased his own dreams his whole life, I realize, like, I may not have a pot to piss in when it's over. But again, I can't carry anything I have with me to whatever's next anyway. I'm gonna look at my life and go, okay, will I have less than 10 regrets? But like that, that's basically my goal. Like have as few regrets as possible. I have like maybe 5, which I think is a very small number. And mistakes, I got like zillions of them. But like regrets, no. And I think you like younger you had a wisdom of just like, you know what? There's got to be more to life than this. I'm gonna figure out what the fuck that is,
Basically,
and get me the heck. Yeah,
I also when I went to South Africa was the very end of apartheid. It was just before de Klerk stepped down, and I wanted to see that, because in journalism school, you're reading about it. It was nothing like seeing it. I wanted to see like what actually is this? What does this mean? Especially coming from Ottawa, which we didn't even lock our cars. We used to leave your car running, go into the 7-Eleven, buy milk, get back into the car. We wouldn't even if why would you turn off the car, right? Because then it's going to get cold and it's -20. So why would you do that? So I wanted to see what that kind of environment was like. Now, of course, I'm a lot older, it's slightly dangerous, but at the time, that's something that I wanted to see. So I was there for a while, and I went around like just Swaziland, just that whole area. And it's also really humbles you because you can become very arrogant sort of in the West. Like you said, it's pretty comfortable. The worst thing is the weather. There aren't any serious day-to-day threats, and you can start to judge Africa or judge the Middle East, judge other places. You've never been there. You've never had to, get an apartment, get around there. The whole legal system is completely different. Everything is different. You've never had to figure that out. And I think it keeps you humble, makes you realize that you actually don't know everything. You actually don't know much at all. And it's good for you, it's just good for you. Get you out of your comfort zone.
So I live in the United States. So in the United States, it depends on where you're at. This is what I would say about the United States. So the biggest thing I trying to explain this to someone that's never experienced this is hard, right? Is the idea of just trying to survive the day, like not just like I'm not talking paying my bills, but the legitimately like the question of am I going to get through to the other side of the day? Right now, there are Americans who know this. I think a lot more. I think on average, they're like, unfortunately, depending on what American city you live in, there is definitely third world aspects in some of those cities. So you could definitely, depending on what part of the neighborhood you're in, you could be in one of those places. It could be just where you were from, like luck of the draw, such and such. They have an idea what that's like. Canadians, by and large, don't. There's some good that comes with that. Like again, I like what you're going through this evening. Your evening, my morning. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. On the other hand, it gives you an awareness and appreciation of how fragile life really can be. And not in a bad way either, in a good way. Because really, okay, what matters to you is your husband, your daughter, and your dog, right? Right this very minute. And any of your other
I have a son and 4 daughters. Just my daughter's home.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying she.
Yeah. No, I was about to add to that. Right? Whatever.
All would matter to me.
Yeah. No. I know absolutely. No, absolutely. But I mean, that's what you're thinking of, right? Your family, your kids, you're like you're with the people that really matter to you, like that. That's important, right? And not a whole lot else actually really is. And you realize that I find like say what you will about heart, and again, I'm not trying to romanticize this in any way, shape, or form because there are better ways to do it than what you're going through. But you're right. But there is something about real life danger, like actually real in your face danger that puts you in the mindset of, I can look at what I have. I can be grateful for the small things. while I ride this storm, whatever this storm looks like going forward. And that, I mean, that is something that I think the rest of the world still regularly experiences. And I think again, to Canada's benefit slash detriment, it never really does.
100%. That's what I'm saying. But not only the thing is, it's one thing it doesn't, but then you, not you personally, but one feels that they have a lot of right to say and judge and make comments, and that I think happens to us a lot, in the West in general, obviously in Canada, because you're so far removed from the life-threatening danger that you're really disconnected from how you might really react, or what you might really think is as the way to behave. It's a disconnection, right? You're disconnected from
Oh,
anything that you don't have a tangible experience. um, it's with me. I'm not, you could see in most of my novels, almost all of them, I always go back to Canada somewhere. My latest one completely takes place in Ottawa. Like, it's with me, and I do bring a lot of the great values and what I learned from there to here. This place, first of all, where I happen to live, is full of Canadians. There are
sure.
Canadians just on my road. There's probably like 4 Canadian families. There are a lot of Canadians here. Um, so we often talk about that. We take what we did. We did get tremendous things from it. But like you said, there are less good things, which is sometimes you're so removed that you can start to value stupid, petty, superficial things. Think those things have value, when if you were in a life-threatening situation, you would realize that obviously you couldn't care less about those things. They're not valuable at all.
I social media in a nutshell, like you can see that like a lot of commentary on it. I'm politically speaking, I'm an atheist. Like politically speaking, at this point
Yeah.
in my life, I just realized that if a government official told me that the sky was blue and I saw a blue sky, there's a little part of me in the back of my head at this point. It's like, okay, what do you want? Because I'm actually agreeing with you, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, after Corona, nobody's
Well, yeah.
sure about.
What? It's just. Oh, again, well, one of the things that I think was made apparent during Corona, like during that whole time, is like whatever moral integrity or fiber you believe in, it's very apparent that our institutions have none of it. So if you put things through that lens, no, it's just I don't like, I really was like, I look at it from the point of view of integrity and transparency, and I look at it from that lens. I cannot find one, even one. I don't care what party it is. Like, I'm not even like left, like fuck that. No, I don't even care. Like, I can't find it. So if
Right.
I can't find it, I just think, okay, well, you're all full of shit. Then why the hell should I care? Right? Then, but again, people get caught up in that like debate here because they have the luxury to do so. Right? What you really realize is in a real crisis, none of that shit matters. It shouldn't. But I mean, when you have the luxury of distance, you have a tendency to like make judgment calls just based on what you think is right. What I've learned, in like I said, that whole era just taught me two really important things. I really don't always know what's going on. I don't always know what's going on. And unless I'm there, I don't have a full fledged opinion. Right. I mean, like, okay, talk about it. Israel's got a very interesting history and has ever since it's come back into being, good, bad, and indifferent. Right. There are things the Israeli government that historically has done has been terrible, but there's things they've done that have been amazing. The fact that the country exists at all in some ways is a bit of a miracle. So do I have an idea of who's right, who's wrong? Nope. But I'm not there. Like, I have like you guys live it, you breathe it, you have your own opinion about what's really going on. And I think it's
Right.
probably very different than what that it's probably a different perspective than what I get advertised over here, if that makes sense, because you're living in it and you see it at your own eyes right there. So I'd be taking your word for it over something I'd see on television at this point. If I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that'd be great if it was just simple as who's right and wrong. But that's part of the problem, right? Is this
Yeah.
constant binary, this constant binary look. There's always got to be a good guy and a bad guy. When of course there aren't really too many real 100% good guys or 100% bad guys in the world. Right? There are some. I'm not saying there's no such thing as there. I'm not saying like that World War II didn't happen or the Holocaust didn't happen. Obviously, there are definitely some really bad guys. But in general, yeah, it's very complicated and it's nuanced. But I think more the issue is that what happens in Israel, I guess also happening right now, but in Ukraine, is you're talking about that. Not that we're going to get into all this now, but that civilians are under attack, and that's a whole different thing. When babies and moms and dads and old people get caught up in what in being the targets, then that's just wrong, right? You can't, if you're angry with the Canadian government because they locked everybody up in Corona, you can't go and take it out on Canadian civilians. So that's a problem, right?
Well,
right. Civilians have to stay out of military affairs.
That's and sadly that's a perfect world. Like, I mean, okay, I'm just gonna mention Ukraine really briefly. Like, one of the things that's not really talked about there is like Russia and NATO are kind of playing a game, and it's really the people, no matter which side you think is right or wrong. That's neither here nor there. The reality of the situation is the people that are having to live there day in and day out, they're the ones taking all the weapons. They're the ones caught in the middle of everything.
Right. So what I'm saying, you've come into a world where the civilians become the targets of people.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a problem. That the world has to be against. People can think politically different things, but you can't be taking it out on day-to-day civilians, no matter what they are, or it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter what religion they are, or what color they are, or what they are, and that there has to be a line drawn there.
Oh, sure. And I mean, but that's the thing. Like, so you're a journalist. So the thing is, I find today.
I don't work as a journalist anymore. Now, I don't work as a journalist these days, but my original degree.
Once upon a time, you were a journalist. Once upon a time, now you're an author, world dominator extraordinaire, whatever the case may be today, right? But
I'm a teacher. I teach English at a college.
Nice. That's cool. Well, we should talk about how you actually ended up. Like, actually, that's a good question. I'll ask this. Okay, when did you know Israel was home for you? Because this is where you live.
Yeah, I had never planned to live in Israel, actually. It's also, I guess, a little bit of a political story. I became engaged to my husband, who is South African. And we went to Johannesburg. Again, this was like around 91, 92, the very last year of apartheid. And we weren't married, we were engaged. And when the authorities at that time saw, and they asked me what I did, and I said I had just finished a journalism degree, they put this huge, just giant stamp in my passport that said not allowed to work or freelance. Because clearly that government wasn't looking for any more upfront coverage of what was going on in Johannesburg or in South Africa in general. So I was not legally allowed to work, which obviously limited the time I could be there. Obviously, I was going to run out of money at a certain time, no matter how frugally I was living, or going to run out of money eventually.
Yeah.
So you only have so much. So eventually I had to leave and go back to Canada. And then And then after, in those days when you left, right? There was no internet, there was no FaceTime. When you were separated, you were separated. So eventually, he wanted to come back to Canada to visit me. And at that time, South Africans could not travel easily. They were, it was known that the government was probably going to fall. They were worried there was going to be civil war there. They didn't know what was going to happen there. So it was known that a lot of South Africans were trying to get out. And if it was a disaster to travel with, because you have your Canadian passport, you just go right through, and he would always be stopped and interrogated for like half an hour. Where are you going? What are you doing? Because they were suspicious. Point is that his visa was rejected. Canada wasn't letting him in. They were suspicious because he'd already been to Canada the previous year. So they were kind of like, oh, you're going back again? You were just here a year ago. Like, what's so exciting about Canada? Like, who wants to come here every second year? What's so, And so we were separate. So the truth is, it wasn't anything political or ideological. It was like we literally couldn't geographically be in the same country because I could not go to a place where I wasn't allowed to work, and he couldn't get in at all. So we didn't have anywhere else to go. And when you're young, when you're in your 20s, you're just like, well, no one's going to tell me what to do, right? I'm not going to be bossed around. When you're young, you think you can do anything and you can start over anywhere and you don't need anything. So I was like, well, I guess we're just going to go to Israel tomorrow morning because what can I do? Like, you can't come here. I can't go there. There's apartheid over there. There's a very suspicious liberal democracy over here. So we ended up here. We didn't really have before that any plan to live here. It was more of a political.
It was
political thing.
A place for him to live and a place for you to work. That was what it came down.
It was like nobody's letting us in, so we ended up here. I mean, I live in a largely expat community, so pretty much everyone in the couple kilometer radius is either from England, Australia, the US, Canada, South Africa, Scotland, wherever. Any English speaking country you could think of, it's like all here. So I guess that's also, that's attractive because I find that interesting. I find other cultures really interesting. So that's what we're doing here.
See, so my favorite things about two cultures. Yeah. My favorite things about cultures, my favorite two things are their food and their swearing.
Right. I talk about my daughter works in an office down the street until recently where they're all Australian, and her English is obviously more Canadian influence, and she just cannot get over their swearing. Like, she is just in stitches every day because what she thinks is funny, they're like, no, we're legitimately swearing. Like, we're actually swearing. I'm not going to use the words that we use.
Oh, yeah.
We would say that in Canada as a joke. Maybe we would call somebody that as a joke. But no, they're genuinely swearing. Yeah, Australian swear words are funny to us. I think so.
Yeah, so my family's Maltese. So our swear words are Arabic based, right? So I can actually swear in Israeli. I can actually swear in Israeli.
My father's second language is Arabic, and his first language is Hebrew. Second language is Arabic, and he lives in Ottawa, so he actually speaks more Arabic than English because there's a large Arab population there now.
Yeah.
So he swears in Arabic. Like, those are all the words that I grew up
in. Yeah. So as well as I do, so when you hear it's like somebody there swear, like from there, it like you can tell it's a curse because just the way the tongue just comes out, you're just like, I don't even know what you said, and I know it's bad. Like, it just comes out. I know it's bad, right?
When you sit down and translate it, it's not nice. Yeah, it's not. It's very different from English.
Yeah, and you can tell right away because it's just the way it comes out. And it's just like, wow. And you can actually almost feel your skin crawl. It was like, damn, there's something behind that. Like, there's really something behind that.
Well, it's also so much more personal, right? Because it's your mother or your sister or your dad or your aunt. Like, they use a lot of personal relatives, which is less common in English to get the relatives involved. So
in the States, you sometimes get your mother involved. Like that does happen still, but yeah, like usually, yeah, U.S. You will get that depending on what part of the country you're in. You'll still get that. Not sister is very Arabic, like that's a very Arabic thing. Is just like sister, right? And again, but then it goes somewhere else. And you're just like Australia, even England. Like British swearing is hilarious to me too. It's just all right. They're not that different, right?
maybe it's probably closer
French
to
is
Australia. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
and then
their expressions in general to us sound funny, which is again, that's not okay. We should be taking them seriously, but that's
well, no,
they laugh at
but
my accent,
again,
so I still get laughed at
yeah,
for saying washroom. Can I tell you how many times I've been laughed at for saying washroom, like by Americans?
yeah,
Because they're just like,
absolutely,
there's no washroom. Only Canadians are looking for the washroom. What is wrong with you? And I've been here for
yeah.
so many, and I still say washroom. I've tried,
Yeah,
and
it's
we
ingrained in
get
you.
laughed at. Like I think we
Yeah,
get laughed at big because no one else says that but us.
and
And we get laughed.
and then there's yeah, it's okay. I mean, that's part of the fun, though. Like that's
Still
actually I
say
think part of the
washroom.
fun
Are they
because
still saying that in Calgary? We're still saying it.
oh yeah, washroom still said here. Canadian like universal Canadian things. Washroom, shoes off at the door. Right,
Yeah,
that's a universal. Yeah, that's a
off at the door.
universal.
I'm a
Yeah,
freak, absolute freak with the shoes off at the door. Yeah,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
another Canadian family
That's a
who does that too, and yeah, they think we're
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, because that's culture. That's culture. That's what you grew up with, right? So these are little things that just again, you look at compared to the rest of the world. I just marvel at the absurdity in a good way. We all have these little unique quirks that make us us, and they're awesome, right? I just
I
mentioned swearing.
don't
Just
have maple syrup in my fridge. I do have real maple syrup in my fridge. I do pay a crazy amount for real maple syrup that everyone laughs at because imported, obviously. I
yeah.
do have salmon in my fridge. I do make shepherd's pie, and nobody
So
else does.
and
And peas.
yeah, so I mean, we have those little things, right? That make you feel like you're at home and make you feel like you. And you know what? That's cool. And everybody else has those things too, which is neat. It's super neat. And they're all different, which is I think again nature of the human nature in general, right? It's both uniquely different and oddly universal at the same time, right? Because we all have the same core desires. It's just how they're expressed compared to where we're from, who we know, to some degree what we believe in. It's fascinating. Like it's just a fascinatingly different world. And it it makes things interesting in a good way.
Yeah, I think actually today there are a lot of people. I think like my family that the culture is very cosmopolitan. It's very
Mhm.
mixed. It's very cosmopolitan. It's not like in my mother's day where like everyone she knows is from Ottawa. Like that's
Yeah.
everyone in her circle. Everyone she knows. Her parents grew up there. She grew up there. Every single one of her friends is from there. If you're from Montreal, it's already she feels like it's like that's exotic somehow. Like, oh, she's from Montreal. Like, I get it. She's not like, a purebred. Like she'll go, okay, but she moved from Montreal when she was 10 or whatever. Like, okay, she's not an authentic Ottawa person. I get it. She's mixed. And I don't think it's like that today because today everyone who comes in through my front door is going to be like from somewhere else with different roots. And I just think the world in general, because of travel and the internet and Zoom and what we're doing now, she wouldn't have had that opportunity, right? I mean, she's 87. She would not have been sitting on a Zoom with someone, talking to people. So I think that's kind of, I think there's a whole group of people like that who aren't really from anywhere in particular.
Yes.
But who have different threads in their personalities, different identities. I don't think we have one. I don't have one identity. I think we have different identities.
No. I think we all do. But I will say, like, okay, I can speak of Calgary here. I think a little bit more than in somewhere else. In that,
are you from Calgary?
No,
grew up there?
I'm originally from. No.
Oh, you didn't. I'm
from. I grew up in Ontario, much like you did, but I grew up all over Ontario.
Sorry, you said that. Right.
Yeah. So for me, I grew up. So it's okay. I don't fault you. I think at this point, I'll say it right now. Calgary's still more interesting, I think, than where I grew. I grew up primarily in London, Ontario, but I lived in a whole bunch of cities there. I moved a lot as a kid. Windsor, Detroit, Toronto. I've also lived in like places like Phoenix, Vancouver. I've lived in like these big places, these small towns, and again, I've been forced to look at the world through a much broader lens because, again, when you even just doing that, you just get exposed to the idea that people see the world differently than you do, right? And you don't have the luxury of picking and choosing what feels comfortable. You have to explore that world. Coming back to Calgary, I've been here for 2 years. I'm not going to be here a third. I'm taking the show legitimately on the road next year. And when I do, it's partly because I'm looking for where I fit, but also I don't want, like, a lot of people here in particular seem very content to settle into their neighborhoods or their sections of the city comfortably. That's great for them, but for me, I still have more to see, and there's still more I want to do. And I'm not ready to live in an environment like that. And I was in San Diego, California, for the Comic-Con there over the summer, and it was cool. But the thing that really struck me with that was, okay, I was in San Diego, even ignoring the con. I love Mr. Doggy. That's it. Let me say a quick hello to Mr. Doggy right there.
Obviously, calm down. I guess if she's prepared to leave the bomb shelter, then she doesn't hear anything. Right? There you go.
That's good.
Yeah, I guess they gotta have a dinner break sometime. They've been firing all day.
Yeah.
It sounds funny. They do, like, you can tell them they've just taken a break. Like, you just know they're all eating or having coffee or whatever. Like, it's like, sounds crazy.
Oh no! Hey, listen, it's true.
Firing rockets on you, and you know that they're hungry now. They've gone on break, but it's totally true.
Yeah, no, it's totally part of the deal. But I mean, and also, I mean, there comes a point where we got a plan for tomorrow and stuff.
Yeah,
too.
I know their times. I know their routines. It sounds crazy, but you just know, like, oh, they get up early and then they like take a break. And then, yeah. Anyway, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, okay. Well, I was saying, like, in the week I was in San Diego, I had more human contact and more interaction in that week than I've had here in over a year, right?
Wow.
Right. So that's, I feel like, and maybe again, I don't know if it's everywhere. I don't think it's everywhere in Canada, but I just got this impression that, like, at least here, people have been content with smaller circles, like really small circles here. And you're right. So I grew up. I mentioned this. I grew up in London, Ontario. London, Ontario is notorious for the small circles where people would get into like these little isolated clusters, and that would be their world. Like what you're talking about with Ottawa. Like I think that's something that's very. I honestly do think that's something that's very Canadian. It's easy to get comfortable in a certain degree of a circle. And I'm just not that point in my life. Like, again, I'm in my midlife crisis. So I'm not ready like maybe in about 10, 20 years, I'll want that small little bubble, but I'm not there yet. There's too much to see, there's too much to do, and there's too much
No,
I'm still
you're
figuring out.
gonna stay like that. People like
Yeah.
us who like to always move around. We stay like
Yeah.
that. You're not gonna.
I might
You might be
I
limited by
might
things. Like kids limit you. You can't just like pick up kids and move them every year, for their whole life.
oh
That might
I
be difficult for them. You can just put them in a new school every year. You might be limited by certain factors, but we always still travel as much as we can, go places. Like
yeah.
you're gonna always like it. But what do you mean by taking the show on the road? Like you're gonna interview people more like street interviews?
So legitimately speaking, I don't, like I said, I don't know where I personally fit, like where I personally fit in the world. And I'm going to go seek it out. So I'm getting a van at some point, and I'm just going to, and for the next wherever, I'm just going to go wherever I feel called to go, and I'm going to meet people and interview them up for the show. I've already started doing that. Like I've been doing, if people have been watching and noticing, my episode titles my numbering has been scattered, but I've already done travel episodes. A lot of them here in Calgary, but some of them like in San Diego, some of them in Okotoks. And as I start traveling more and more and more, I'm going to get more people and start doing more events. I'm going to get more people, and that's going to be the preferred format of doing the show. If I do it long enough this way, who knows? Maybe I'll go to your neck of the woods and maybe do this in person someday. Hopefully, no bombs. But I mean,
Yeah, that's one thing I can tell you is that Israel is a small country and it cannot contain bombs for very long. Won't go on because it just can't. Eventually, they'll just do something scary to stop it. Like they can't. They know you can't keep a tiny. Right? Think how small it is. Right? It's like smaller than New Jersey. You can't keep the home front in and everything shut down for too long. So eventually they'll just do something. I don't know what. I'm glad it's not my decision, but it's something will stop it. It's not like the U.S. or something that could go, look at Russia and Ukraine. There's no way that you can't have that here. You can't have a war going on for like a year. It's not. Russia's huge, right? And they can sustain that. Can't sustain that. Ukraine is also huge.
Yeah, they can kind of, but yeah, that's deeper stuff.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying they happily sustain it, but they can sustain it because it's a big enough country that the civilians can continue living so far away that it's not directly impacting them every second. This place is too small, so we'll finish with something. I don't know. The Americans moved a big warship. It was the first time. That's something I've never seen before, and I've been here for a long time. My family originally came here in the 1880s, so I know a lot about the history here. And there's a big American warship that's just moved along the coast. So that's less common for the U.S. to move any of their Middle Eastern assets here. And that maybe, this is off topic, it's not something I would put in your podcast necessarily, but that's a little scary because we certainly don't want to be starting a World War III situation. So, they're there for a reason. They're there to intimidate so that nobody else gets involved.
Sometimes
that can backfire. Hopefully it won't.
As a wise person, not me, but a wise person once said to me, "You can only control what you can control, and the rest will take care of itself." Right, and that's it, right? And on some level, like, and this is going to sound really cheesy, really corny, right? On some level, it always kind of finds a way to work itself out, right? In a nutshell, nothing stays the same forever. Nothing lasts forever. You have to kind of just like, it's in the storm. I think the big thing is sometimes we forget that it is a moment in time. It doesn't last forever. And you've been here before, like you yourself, you've been here before. You'll do it again. Hopefully not, but probably at some point again. You'll be there, you go through it, and I hope not. Like I legitimately hope not. But history has a way of repeating itself.
Right? The Europeans stopped fighting each other at some point.
Oh, so, sure.
I often take strength from that the Europeans fought each other. People forget, Germany and France and England, and they fought for hundreds of years, and they don't fight now. So
no,
there'll be more peace agreements, and the fighting will stop.
There will come a day. I'm hoping it's in our lifetime. There will come a day where I'm not just Israel, but things like Ukraine, like these things will not be the regular thing anymore. Right? Yeah. There will come a time where that will be the case. But much like anything else in life, I've learned that it's a struggle to get there. We don't get there cleanly. We go through ups and downs, and we learn. I think the biggest thing I've learned in this life is, I don't got much of a say in it. I don't have, and I say that probably as a good thing because I probably would mess it up. Right? There's not a lot of decisions I make that, in the grand scheme of things, matter, like change the world. And even the guys that have that power, they don't really have that much power either. What I've learned is, okay, what can I control? How I approach the day, how I see people, and how I choose to interact with them. And
is that what you try to achieve with your podcast? Like, are you just trying to get more people to see different points of view and interact? Is that the sort of umbrella message of it, or does it have a different?
A slightly different one. Okay, here's the thing. You are Gila Green. You are a teacher. You are an author.
You pronounce that really well. I gotta hand it to you, because most people struggle with my name for at least 3 months.
Yeah, look at mine.
Brilliantly.
Yeah.
Well,
so
last name, that might be.
Yeah.
Pantelleresco.
Yeah.
Sounds like Italian.
Maltese. Sounds Italian. It's Maltese, but it sounds Italian for sure. Again, Malta is an interesting culture too, because in every major war, we have been invaded and, for the most part, conquered by somebody. Consequently, the Maltese people probably have a little bit of everybody in them, just based on the fact that everybody, because Malta is always important, right? Consequently, Malta is always important in a major war. So someone invades or someone tries to invade whenever a major conflict happens. The Roman Empire is there. The Greek Empire was ancient Greeks were there. Italians were there. Middle East has been there many times. So, the Germans try to get there. The Russians have been there. The United States has been there. England has been there. So it's got a long history of just different cultures hitting it. So what I've learned is that everybody.
Have you gone to Malta?
I have not gone to Malta yet. That's
a shame. Now you gotta go.
No, it is. 2025. 2024, okay. I'm going to be traveling through Canada and the United States. 2025, I haven't found what I'm looking for. Even if I do find what I'm looking for, 2025, at this point, I'm going to England, because I know to tie this to what you're asking, what the podcast stands for. You're Gila Green, you have a story. And we haven't talked about your books much. If you notice this, in a near hour we've talked. We have talked. We have just talked. Right? I don't know. Like I don't know if you have a heavy religious background. I don't know your political party. I don't know a lot of the superficial stuff. What I got the privilege of doing with you today is we got to talk about a little bit of everything. I've made you laugh at some terrible jokes. I've
You call my dog down.
Yeah, I said hi to your dog. I said hi to your dog. I've got to experience a little bit of humanity with you, and a not so fun time with you on your end of things. And I think the important thing, there's two important messages this podcast has done for as long as it's been around. It's like, one, you're no different than Marissa May or Spider Robinson, Charles DeLint, some of the bigger author guests I've had, and that you're a person with a story to tell, right? And that matters, because that's what we're trying to do as authors, as artists in general. We're trying to connect to people, and your desire to connect is no less important than anybody else's, right? That's one of the biggest messages of the show, right? I don't care where you come from. I care about who you are. That's the first.
Really nice. That's really nice.
Yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is the other thing. I'm quietly promoting the arts because it's something I'm into doing. Like, we're gonna plug your book when this conversation's all said and done, right? It might be the only time we talk about your book in any great detail.
Okay.
But then we might get into it. Who knows? I don't. Again, when we started this conversation, there was no set plan.
Right.
Right.
Well,
and
normally I would have a whole schedule, but the whole country shut down, so there's nothing open.
Yeah.
Nothing but it's like Corona. In Corona when you realize you can't do it.
Yeah.
Because Canada was really strict too. I remember it was crazy.
Well, Canada was batshit insane strict. Right.
It was like, if I wanted to go see my parents, you had to go to a hotel for 14 days at your own expense. And it was just like, you had to go to.
No,
I'm like, how am I supposed to do that? That's just crazy. I can't afford that. I can't go sit at a hotel for 2 weeks.
Well, or you do what a lot of people eventually ended up doing is they said, fuck it, right? I don't give a shit. You can't, like, the thing about Canada is it's so big. If someone wants to really get away with something, they can, because there's no, it's just too big of a country.
So how did they get away with it? They hotels and then ran away,
they would just do their own thing. Look, I would meet, even when I worked during the pandemic. I was in Windsor, Ontario during the pandemic. I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people quietly bent/broke all the rules because they made no fucking sense. Oh yeah. Well, they made it right. They like, honestly, like, there's gonna be some Canadians that genuinely disagree with me, but honestly, again, that's the other thing. Pandemic has taught me, really, I could give a shit. I really could at this point in my life. It's just like, this is how I see it. I'll give you a good example. Getting a haircut was a bitch, during that year. So with all the lockdowns and shutdowns, well, people got bills to pay, right? People have bills to pay. So there's this barbershop. I'm not going to name names. So this barbershop publicly was closed. Publicly. Privately, you could get an appointment. You could literally get in through the back. No one gave a shit once you were inside. I mean, no one. Right? Because someone's listening to this that might have been like affected by COVID. Let me tell you something. People had to pay their bills. Like, the bills didn't stop when the virus hit.
There were cars parked there or anything?
No.
Nobody was like, no. Hey, I noticed cars parked at this place
because there came a point with that. There just came a point with that people understood that, you know what, people are going to do what they have to survive, and no one begrudged him that, because again, that, like, people are going to do what they have to survive, no matter what the rules say. So you learn what those gray areas are, and you bend them. It's not the only story I have from that time either. I worked at a couple places that didn't give a shit about masks. I worked at a couple places that really gave a shit about masks, right? Some, like, I saw like the thing is, when you have so many rules, what eventually dawns in your head is there are no rules, because it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter. Everybody is going to, again, because there comes a point where everybody's going to do what they have to survive. And again, I'm not condoning or condemning anyone for whatever choices they chose to make in that time. You had to do what you believed was right. But again, going back to something I said earlier, when trust erodes in the system, people take matters into their own hands more and more and more and more. Now, that didn't mean everything was hunky dory. I lived in Windsor, Ontario. My grandmother was in Detroit. One of my grandmothers was in Detroit. I couldn't go see her. Like I really just couldn't go see her. And the thing is, I was 15, maybe I was 25 kilometers from her, if that. Like that like, and I could not cross that imaginary line. That still burns a little bit.
They just
Yeah, they
weren't
wouldn't let
letting
anyone cross that border. They weren't just like they were letting quote unquote essential workers to cross the border. That was it, and it was that and even then that even the procedures a lot of them had to follow. Some of those things were absurd. So you couldn't cross that border, especially like Windsor, Detroit.
Even if you were tested and negative, you couldn't go over the border.
No, there was a whole point that border was shut down for a good, like they shut it down till like 2021. Then and they opened it kind of with the vaccine, and then when the vaccine kind of went tits up, they shut it down. They shut it down again. So right, so I mean that's the I mean, and that's when Canada started doing their big protests with Ottawa and Windsor and all these other places too. Like like Canadian a lot of like Canada's a lesson of what happens when you go too far on those kinds of things too. Like in again, this is my opinion, but I mean, I watched it. I worked in it during it. The good chunk of it was just fucking absurd. Like there wasn't the accountability, not just from the top down, just it got to a point where the rules made no sense. And when the rules made no sense to anybody to follow, people just started doing their own thing. And again, we're in a country that's big enough that you can't watch every nook and cranny. So people are just going to do what they damn well please, right? And that's just
plenty of people here did whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because right because
super strict people. I mean, there was nothing you could do. If the school's closed, the school's closed. Like you can't make the school open. You know, there's certain things you can't do what you want because you can't control.
Sure.
But people here went in all different directions. They were super strict. They were like literally, washing their groceries before they brought them into the house, hosing them down, and like really, or just like they do whatever they want. And I'm not paying any attention to this. It's very hard to police an entire population of people.
As long as it's very hard, it's absurd.
You can't.
Right? You can't.
Every time you have 10 people in your backyard, you can't have people. They're going to phone the police every time you have more than 10 or more than whatever number they decided.
And again, where did that number come from? Like, where was this arbitrary decision? Right? It got like the more you thought about it, the more nuts it got. So, and this is why, like I said, at this point in the ball game, I don't. Whatever people chose to do, I don't knock them for it.
People did their best.
Yeah, that's it. Like they did their like.
Fights here about it too, about the vaccines. Either they said you were a murderer for vaccinating your kids, or you were a murderer for not vaccinating your kids. Like they put
you
a terrible situation where you didn't know.
Well, you couldn't win. I mean, a lot of what I was watching with the vaccine came from you guys in England, because you guys were first. You guys were not like the first country to do it, and England was the second. So I like my decision process. Again, my dad's a naturopath, so I got to watch. So for me personally, I got to watch what the hell, the opioids. I got to watch my dad deal with the opioid crisis when it first came about in Windsor, because so I got to watch what happens when you put a substance into somebody and you see the consequences up close and personal. So I was the kind of guy, I was never going to jump in and get the shot early, because I've seen too many examples in my lifetime of things going wrong, just with that alone, not including anything else I've seen in my life. And and that's just, and I'm just witnessing it, not what my father would see. Again, he's a naturopath, so he would try to come up with ways to wean people off this shit if that really got addicted and fell. So I got to watch this up close and personal. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the smart thing. I'm gonna watch what happens with you guys. I'm gonna give it to a certain point. I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna see how it goes. And I watched it and I saw how it went and I made my decision accordingly. And that's all there is to it. But I don't knock anyone for whatever choices. I don't knock anyone for making a choice with what's best for them. I think looking back, no matter which side of the fence you were on, I am mad at people who try to force other people to make a choice, regardless of which choice they made themselves, if that makes sense. Because I don't think that was right.
Yeah, it was very look, it's still ongoing, right? They're trying to get you to get boosters, and because we're going back into winter, and
yeah, they're trying to make it. They're trying to make it.
You know, I think my parents in Ottawa have had like 5 shots or something like that.
Yeah.
7, so they're like first in line for a gazillion.
But again, it's a culture thing, right? So I at this particular point in the ball game, like I won't. But if you're gonna do it, I mean, I wish you the best. I mean,
yeah, no, I said like that's enough. But I understand at their age, they're not gonna say that. They're gonna take.
It depends. It depends on. This is what I meant. It depends,
right?
Well, it comes down to 2 things. It comes down to, like I said, if you saw stuff like I saw, I don't care how old you are, you're not touching it, right? But if if you again, the natural inclination when you're very health conscious, like if you're health conscious, regardless of whether you're healthy, not healthy, whatever, your natural inclination the first is going to be I'm going to get the shot. Then that's going to be the natural one. Whether it works or not, or that's not what we're talking about, but whatever the case may be, that's usually the common denominator. Right? But but it depends on your history with the medical industry. Like, has it taken care of you? You're probably going to get the shot.
They're not critical about it. If you trust
right. Yeah, exactly, right.
Until now, everything they've said has gone the way they've said it's going to go. So then you got no reason to be suspicious, cynical, because they've been fine.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right? That's what it really comes down to. It's your history with the medical industry. If you had a good history with them, right? If you have a good history with them, you're probably going to trust them. Ish. I don't think they're as trusted now as they were a few years ago, but that's again neither here nor there. But if you have a history where it has gone AWOL, like it has gone awry, you're not going to be so quick. And that's legitimately. And again, I see both sides of it. You know, I understood people that did, and I don't knock anyone that made whatever choices they made. Again, at the end of the day, it's about what's best for you, right? And
like, let's say if you're a parent, you've got to make choices for kids, right? So it's a different. You've got to think, okay, you know, this is your kid, and now you got to make a decision, and you don't really know when it's yourself. You know, it's more complicated when it's for other people. So
what I
do. And then there's pressure, right? Because they want to open the school. And they say, well, you can't open the school if you guys aren't vaccinated. So then parents were putting pressure on other parents, like, just do it so we could get them back at school. It's like it got really complicated. Now, obviously, it doesn't exist anymore. Like, that's all gone. Like, no one's here. It's gone. I don't know about over there, but here,
well,
you can either get a shot or not. But nobody has to.
So it's been politicized over here. Like I said, like I have a very, again, personal note, I wouldn't do it, but again, I'm not knocking anyone that does, right? But that's a rare thing. A lot of Canadians would look at me as, I guess, selfish or a conspiracy theorist or something to that effect at this point in the ball game. I can only go by the history I've seen and the things I've read. And like I said, and one of the biggest things I read was you guys. I watched you guys very closely and what happened with you. So I went with that.
But essentially what happened is that it all went away, and then it all came back.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And okay, I guess everyone needs another one. This is what happened, right? You saw the number drop.
Oh yeah.
Look, it worked. It's all gone, and then it all went back, and it was like, oh, I guess it just wears off.
Yeah. Well,
that's basically what happened.
That's basically
what happened.
Yeah, no, I watched it. Like when we were trying to force everybody here to do it, you guys are already on your third shot. You were the first country to be there. It was like, how is that going to work, right? And then you guys got to your fourth shot, and I was like, okay.
The third one, there was no more.
There's no more pressure to get another shot.
They actually came out and said, you know what, it's not really making a difference. Either this doesn't work at all, or it works, but it only works temporarily.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I mean, that's what most of the world has come to. Here, Canada, and the United States, this is the money aspect of the medical industry. I think it's because they've put in so much money into these things that they're trying to get their money back. That is my crazy theory. That's why it's advertised here a little bit differently than it is anywhere else in the world. World's mostly moved on. Here,
I mean, moved on. Like, if you want to go get a shot tomorrow, you can, but nobody's talking about it or telling you.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares, right? So, right here, you'll still see, like, I saw a football commercial on the football about getting your like winter booster shot kind of thing, and like I said, it was very politicized over here, it was very, very politicized, and again, it created rifts here that did not exist pre-pandemic. That's the one thing I will say about it.
That's sad. Whatever. Everything in the world now has become politicized. You can't just disagree, right? When I was growing up, you could just disagree, and it didn't make you Satan, and it didn't make you an angel. You just disagreed. It was like, okay, and now it's like if you disagree, it's like then you're a bad person because you don't think the way I think. It's really bad. That's bad.
No. It's become very sad because you try to look for, again, like we talked about earlier, nuance. Like there's nuance to everything, right? No one makes a choice for this one-dimensional reason ever, right? They're looking for, again, at the end of the day, most of us are just trying to do the best we can. I would say 90% of people are doing it. That at least 90. I don't really give a shit what party you go
through the day with the resources that they have.
That's it.
Usually
that's limited.
Like you're going to be limited.
And that's all anyone. Yeah, and honestly, where it would be better to get find people for help. This goes back to your community stuff, right? Now you got a lot of people getting into picking a side of, well, I like this guy better because of whatever reason, right? And I'm like, I have a very simple lens. Are you being straight with me, and are you accountable? And it's a really, really, again, and when I look at my political, again, that's why politically I'm an atheist, because it's just like I look at it and go, none of you can pass that test, and it's an easy test. Can you just be honest with me, and can you be accountable for your own bullshit, right? That's all I want. I don't really care what your party is. If you right, that's what I want. I can't find it, so I think you're all shit. And that's it, right? And so that it's a very simple, it's a very simplistic view, but it's also just it's the only way I measure people. I measure people I measure you by, again, I've had this conversation with you for over an hour, right? You're a very intelligent woman, right? You're a very intelligent woman. You have your own opinions about things. You've seen the world. You've seen more of the world than I have. So you're probably wiser. I'm right. I'm going to give you probably because I don't know you that well yet, right? So
I hope I learned something.
yeah. That's it, right? You
I
hope
hope
so,
you learned.
right?
Yeah, I
Sometimes I
hope so.
wonder. Sometimes I wonder, but
Especially
like
like right, you gotta feel like you because every teacher knows that you're always teaching something beyond whatever subject you're teaching. The class is looking at you, even
also
though I'm trying to teach them how to speak English, and they have really varied backgrounds. They can be Russian or Ukrainian or Ethiopian or French or Israeli, like Hebrew speaking Israelis. Um, they can have so many backgrounds, but you know that you're always teaching them more than English, right? Because they're looking to you.
oh
You
yeah.
know what materials are you going to use? What kind of text are you going to use? If some teachers are, they're really into the environment, so every text is really pro environment, right? It's gonna whatever you think is gonna leak into what you choose to teach, what assignments you choose to give, right? If you're very into the environment, you're going to be constantly giving those kind of assignments because you have leeway in, English is a language. So language has thousands of subjects. What do you want to teach, right? What do you want to give over to all these
Oh
different
yeah.
young students? So you hope you have some wisdom because what for good or for bad you're influencing
Yeah.
people.
Well. I mean, teachers are much. Even actually, this will be a good segue. We can finally get to your books eventually, but we'll talk
Yes.
teaching for a second here.
Okay.
We'll talk teaching for a minute. We'll get to your books. Then we'll wrap this up. But teachers, much like writers and other artists, are putting themselves into their work. The best teachers use themselves as kind of like as a template to teach, right? And and you go out there, you put yourself out there, and you're gonna be like, well, this is me today with the whatever materials I'm teaching them, right? You're probably not teaching them any of the swear words in English, right? You're probably not allowed to do that. I'm sure they figured that shit out on their own.
Yeah,
But
they got that.
yeah, exactly. So, but the thing is, in teaching them to communicate with each other, you're forming again. Ultimately, you're forming connections with your students, and they're gonna trust you, right? They're trusting you to help them, and that's important. They want to have that connection so that they can understand and go out into the world better prepared to deal with, you know, crazy English speakers like myself, and going, well,
Well,
how do I deal with this guy?
it's such an
Yeah.
important course for them because every university student today knows that if whatever their career is, computers, business, nursing, they need to have a certain amount of English today. It's not like 50 years ago that they have to be able to go online. They have to be able to Zoom with people overseas. They got to be able to, update their research content. Like English is the international language. So
Yep.
it's really
And
important to them,
well,
as
yeah,
much as
because
it's so hard for so many of them, right?
well, because English makes no sense. That's the other thing too. English actually makes no sense. Like it's
Such an idiomatic language, right? We don't mean what we say. Everything is an expression or an idiom. We just do not mean what we say. And they sit there with their electronic dictionaries, or even now they have these
and
pens that translate sentences at a time. And it makes no sense to them because we're
no,
completely idiomatic.
yeah, no, it's so true, right? It makes no sense. So that's the thing. That's why the relationship, the keyboard is why English is universal. That is why, because the keyboard is what has made English go worldwide. I realized that a long time ago because it's how when the computer became important, English became important. And even though like Mandarin's a good language to learn. There's some Arabic like dialects that are really good to learn too. There's also like Hindi in India, like for like just the worldwide. There's Spanish, right? And even to a lesser extent now these days French, though not as important as it once was. It's spoken by a lot of people. There are other languages that are very important, but because of the keyboard, English has taken number one. Um, and even though I think honestly, like North America's legacy, if an empire rises and falls, it's going to be the keyboard,
Interesting.
right?
I hadn't
That's
thought.
my theory. That's my theory,
Yeah,
right?
it's yeah. I mean, we could also because the language is a culture, so you're trying to teach them. I can see in my own kids their whole. I can see in myself. Do you speak another language like French or? So when you speak
Comme si,
another
comme
language,
ça, français.
yeah, your mannerisms changes, the jokes change,
Mhm. Yeah,
everything
your your
changes.
thinking changes. Your thinking
You're thinking,
changes.
so you're trying to give them the culture with the language as well because you want to speak English like an English speaker. You don't want to speak English like a different type of speaker so that you're really communicating so that what's polite in English is you're going to use that even though to you it might seem excessively polite, right? Just like if we're talking to British people, they might seem excessively polite to us or Americans might seem excessively direct because their English is more direct.
Yeah,
Canadian, Canadians are kind of in the middle. Some people tell me they find even Canadians to be a little not cold, but a little more standoffish, let's say, than Americans.
dispassionate,
More, yeah, a little more not
dispassionate.
apathetic, but we're a little more.
We're
We're,
more. We're a little bit more blah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's where like okay, a Brit, you can feel it. You can feel their passion. They're nice about it, ish. Okay, they can be like I don't know.
They
I've had a
humor
few.
too. They have
Oh yeah,
that cynical humor that's very
yeah.
funny.
They have a certain cynical humor. They have a certain cynical humor that's fun. The Irish and Scottish, same thing. Never piss off a Scotsman. I've learned that one. Like the stuff that comes out of there is good. Um, Never piss off a Scotsman. But at the same time, like there's a personality with every part of English in the world, right? So Canadian I had a theory about Canadians and Canada, and I think this is part of our charm, but also I think again something because we are still a young nation compared to most of the world, right? Is I don't we haven't fully connected with who we are, like who are we? Like United States is very direct, upfront, in your face, but it's who they are. Like the cynical humor of Britain, it's who they are. I think a lot of Canadians are very, I wouldn't say tepid's the right word, but they're hesitant to show their passion right away,
Yeah,
right? Whereas
definitely.
I think a lot of other right, whereas a lot of other cultures have no problem telling you who they are and where they stand for right off the bat. Like, I make no bones about it. This is who I am. Want a beer? And that's literally every other country in the world. Whereas Canadians are like, want a beer? All right, who are you? We're figuring that out. We're figuring that out still. And that's okay, right? I think as we develop more history, right? As we develop more of a history of our own history and our own story in the world, I think the Canadian identity will become a lot more pronounced, right? And
That definitely leads into my books because I've definitely had Americans read my books and say, "Wow, like your culture is really so different." They a lot of them also tend to think it's almost exactly the same, and it's really not.
yeah,
And so Canadian literature it is important, right?
yeah,
Those stories, none of my books are going to take place in the States. Even though that would probably sell better and be easier to publish and etc. I remember
yeah,
even with White Zion, which is like a collection, a British publisher saying if you could just have this take place in London, we would take it. And it's like, but it's Ottawa. It's not London. I cannot turn it into London. That's not going to happen. So, and that's not who I am, and that's not what I want to do. When you get into that whole thing with publishing, like you were saying about politics, it also becomes a lot of like. There's a lot of that. Like, if you would do that, I would take it, and if you would do this, and it's like, okay, but I don't want to do that.
sure,
I want to be a Canadian author. I don't want to change the location to the UK, even though, yeah, that would make it more marketable. It's, etc. I don't want to do that. You're going to have that in every industry
sure.
where people are asking you to do things you don't want to do. And you got to ask yourself, are you in it for the higher chance of, publicity, or are you, like you said, are you trying to tell your story? This is my story, and I'm not changing it because it's more trendy right now if I do this or do that, and I'm not looking to be trendy. So I've had that a lot.
It depends on the book. This is my only. It's the only kind of rebuttal I'm going to have. Like, okay, so I have a novel I've submitted. It takes place in a parallel universe, Vancouver. It does not have to be a parallel universe, Vancouver. It could be a parallel universe, Zimbabwe. It doesn't really matter, right? Right? Because in this particular story, because I have mystical places, like I have an alternative. So just in my novel, it's about basically a night witch killing evil versions of Knights of the Round. So it goes to some mystical.
A night witch.
A night witch. Do you know who they are?
That's something different from a witch.
So the night witches were. Okay, I'll give you. It's a real history.
Oh, there are night witches. I thought you were like.
No. I'll tell you. It's a cool story. I think you'll appreciate it. So during World War II, the Russians were getting devastated by the Germans, right? So to the point that there weren't enough men to actually fight the war. So they would have these women, okay, fight them. And they would give these. They didn't give these women anything. They gave them these really crappy wooden planes. I mean, they were garbage. It was all they had. So they couldn't fight the Germans during the daytime. They couldn't because the planes would just get shot out of the sky. But what they realized was very quickly that at night, no one could see the planes. And they were very maneuverable. So they were hard because you couldn't see them. You couldn't catch them because they were too maneuverable compared to the modern plane. So the women would actually, at night, they would load up with bombs. They would go to the Germans. They would bomb 3 times a night, right? And all they could hear is this whistle, like from the plane. That's when they knew they were coming, right? Most successful unit in the Russian army in World War II. They only had 48 casualties in 4 years, which when you compare that to any other troop, they did very well. Like those women were badass. Like they were legitimate badasses. So I took like that in concept, and I just created like an evil version of the Night of the Round. Now again, it has a bit of a Canadian flavor. I had Vancouver in it, but Vancouver isn't necessary for my story. So the publisher went to me, "Hey, listen, we want it to take place in Jerusalem." Okay, I wouldn't have a problem with it because it's not the core concept of the story that I need to keep. With books, you got to kind of make it right. With
London,
books, you got
they would speak differently. I mean, all the dialogue would be different. You can't just
no.
As I said you can't just turn Canadians into British people. You would have to change every single sentence. We don't even phrase ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
no.
I can tell you that his English is not my English. Like South African English is like a whole other thing happening.
Oh, absolutely.
There's Afrikaans in it. And not anymore. He used to. Now he's a lot older. But when I first met him, it had certain like Zulu words and African words in it that I would just be like, I'm sorry, I do not know what you're saying. You can't just I hear what you're saying. That makes sense. But let's say in a short story, you'd have to change all the dialogue.
No. Absolutely. No. Absolutely.
The whole atmosphere of those stories in White Zion also was Ottawa, the cold, the winter. The whole atmosphere is different.
Right? No. And that's my point. Like some stories you can do that. Some stories you can't. And you got to be honest about what those, because ultimately also it's about what you want to say at the end of the day, right? Too, right? I have a much more like I have a basic universal concept that can be said anywhere at any time.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. That's it.
Published? Is that like a book?
It's right now in an agent's hands right now. So if not, I have other plans. But like,
okay, I can't.
If like so, if yeah, not yet. I have other books you can order through Amazon, right? Okay. But again, but the thing is, right? When you look at again, is the decisions you have to make with a book, right? Is who do you what is this book really about? Why do I care about it so much? Like for you, and I can see this, all right? Like just based on this little conversation, right? Home matters to you, not just Israel home, but the home you
Place
grew up in. And
matters.
the reason, or
Like
yeah, it does.
place matters to me. That I have one book that's completely takes place in South Africa's Kruger National Park, and I had to spend a lot of
Yeah.
time putting myself in that place because I'm not from there, and it's a environmental. It's like a YA environmental book about elephant extinction, and I had to really just immerse myself in elephant extinction and why, like, that's how naive I was when I first started looking into it. This was maybe, I guess, 2018. It came out in 2019, so it probably took me, a year to write or something. I didn't even think it was a thing anymore. That's how naive I was. I was
Oh
like,
yeah, no.
still want ivory? Like, isn't that like out? Meanwhile, no, no, it's still this huge, massive industry, huge, massive demand. And I really wanted, I made sure that I had South Africans who go to Kruger Park at least 4 times a year, read it, because I wanted to make sure that you were there on this safari and that it wasn't like you were sort of there. I wanted to make sure that it was really authentic and there wouldn't be
Oh yeah.
anything that would be there. I'm really into place. I think place is really important. I think that that's something overlooked by a lot of like newer authors or even less new authors, that people's favorite books, if I bet you, almost 100% that when I ask you your favorite book, you're going to right away tell me like the place and the time. Like, it's so important to people. It's like, oh, I was, it was 1950, it was, right after, this war in the US, or it was in Japan, or it was in, but the place and the time is really going to stick with you. Or like you said,
Oh,
a futuristic place or a fantasy place. It sticks with us more than we think. I know that we talk a lot about character and you identify with character and you have to really relate to the character, but I think that place is a character
it is,
in a novel.
and it shapes. Well, even in real life, place shapes who you are. Right?
Right.
Place absolutely
Like, I
shapes who
want
you
to
are.
take you to that place. So let's say in my new book, which isn't out yet, was the reason I approached you in the first place, called With a Good Eye. I was really trying to take people to this Ottawa of like the 80s. It was the 80s. It was so not, I see my kids now and it's just like, I don't know what social media they're on. And like, it's so different. Their whole teenage experience is radically different, right? Because it's
Oh,
TikTok and
absolutely.
it's like your reels and you're this, and I don't even know what is happening. It's going so fast. Instagram, Snapchat, now it's TikTok, and I can't keep up with it. And it's such a different. Everything they do is done differently. Everything the way they organize everything. So I really wanted to take people back to what it was like then. And what was important to me about this book, it took me a long time to write this book because I would start writing it and then I would send it to some beta readers and they would be like, no, like all the characters were too two-dimensional. They were either too mean, too this, too that. It just didn't work. So I would put it aside and then I'd write a different book and then I'd go back to it. And then if it didn't want to work again, and then I would write another book and I'd go back to it. And at a certain point I even thought, maybe I can't write this book. Like maybe I just can't. Maybe I'm not talented enough to write this book. Until I actually sent it. I was using this. She's also a Canadian writer and editor. I don't know if you've heard of her, Pearl Luke.
I haven't heard
used
of
her.
her.
Well, she's a very talented writer and editor. I'm pretty sure she lives in Vancouver now. I'd used her to edit some of my stuff, and eventually, at one point, I sent her a draft, and she said, "You know what? You're trying to write 2 books. This is, I think, the problem. You're actually trying to tell so much in this one book, so it's not working." And that actually solved my whole problem. I literally just cut out this whole message that I was trying to say with this whole other characters and put it in for another book, and just focused on one part of it. And then things started to fall into place. I had some great beta readers. One was in, I like to use people from different places. So one was like either she was always in Mexico or she was always in Switzerland. The other one was either in the US or always in Holland. And they're both much younger than I am. And they had such different perspectives. I really think it added to the book when you have readers who are so different, really different places. We do these Zooms and everyone was really in a different place, but like you said, but the same, you know, we all were into writing and doing each other's books. And the message of this book, really, I was trying to write about what it's like to have parents, the sort of the effects of PTSD from trauma, from military trauma. If you have a father or a mother who've been through really horrific military experiences, I don't think, for me, I hadn't read anything. I'm a huge reader. Enough about how that affects the kids. What's it like? Because now these are words everyone's familiar with. Everyone says the word narcissist, and everyone says the word PTSD and trauma. These are really common words. But when I was growing up, these were not words at all. These are not words that anybody heard. I never heard those words. I didn't, you know, there was nowhere to put what was going on. So I was trying to write about the effects of narcissism and PTSD on kids, and also what it's like when there's a criminal element to your parents. That's very confusing for young kids, and sort of where to put that, and how does that work when you're just like a regular kid in this really little conservative kind of town, but your parents are so farther off than, you know, literally anywhere else, you know, and there's no internet, and we don't have this language. So that's what I was trying to do with this heroine, is she's got these two really like out there parents with really no way to deal with that. And so that's part of a lot of what With a Good Eye is about. I think I made her 19 or 20, and she's got to get through that. And I hope it has, you know, a hopeful message and a bit interesting. I made them also, I think a lot of people, certainly in North America, have a stereotype about Jewish people, that they're sort of all have a European background. They're all, you know, what we call Ashkenazi Jews, which is more of a white European background, either from Russia or Germany, from Europe. And actually, there are all these other Jews from the Middle East and Arabic countries, and obviously Israel or pre-Israel. My great-grandparents are from Yemen, which is North Africa. So I tried to make them that kind of family. When I was growing up, I think I was asked every like 5 minutes if I was Italian or if I was Greek, like all day long. I couldn't even convince people that I wasn't Greek or Italian. My name didn't help, because that could mean anything, right? Like that could be Italian, right? Like Gila could be Italian, could be, just everywhere. People would come up to me, speak to me in Italian, you know, speak to me in Greek. It was just a constant thing where it was like, I'm not Greek, I'm not Italian, I can't help you, I don't know what you're saying. So I wanted the heroine to also have that. There's this kind of stereotype that there's a certain background to Jewish people, which is of course completely wrong, right? They're from Iran, and they're from Iraq, and they're from Libya, and they're from Lebanon, and they're from all these places. So that was an important part of the story, was her identity. Yeah, and Ottawa was important. So that was probably my only book where the whole thing takes place in Ottawa. There's no other place. And a lot of my other novels, I migrate around. King of the Class, my first novel, which was published in Vancouver, is a completely futuristic novel. It imagined like an Israel of the future that was divided into 2 states and a man-made island. And it was a completely futuristic satire of a country that couldn't get along and divided and became one very, very secular, staunchly secular country, and then one super, super religious country. They'd had a civil war. And so it was this kind of futuristic imagined place where sort of religion and secular couldn't get along anymore, and had to have a civil war and like break up. So it was like 2 states, 2 Jewish states. and then a man-made island off the coast. So that was a completely different thing. And White Zion goes all the way back to Ottoman Empire, British mandate Palestine. It goes completely historical, sort of migrate around. Like I said, one takes place in South Africa. So this was really like a return to a story I'd been trying to tell for a long time and just couldn't. It just was never good. I could tell from the beta reactions that this was not working, and I need to be a better writer. I need to improve my skills. I need to write more. Maybe I need to grow up. I don't know. I needed something more, because it's not easy to portray mental illness. It's very difficult because you can fall into a stereotype easily. And these people are nuanced. They're not stupid and they're not just crazy. They're actual three-dimensional people. So you've got to get that nuance. It's really important so that they're real people. And I think mental illness is for me anyway, it was hard on the page that way.
So, of the three things you mentioned earlier, PTSD was the only one that might have been heard back in the day. Of the three, the rest of them not so much, but PTSD maybe, because that came around I think after the Vietnam War. That's how old I am. That's how old I am. I can remember that shit. But the big thing about like mental illness in the 80s and I will say early 90s, not late 90s, but early 90s. Like if you had something, right? You would try to. I wouldn't say you wouldn't necessarily think something was wrong, because again, it would be normal for you.
Exactly.
Right? It would be normal.
So hard on the page, right?
Right. So the challenge. So I mean, from what it sounds like here for you. Now I don't know why. I don't know all of the whys and why you care so much, but you really cared about this novel very much. And probably what happened, like you said, you wanted to put so much into it. It was like you had too much for what you were really trying to tell. And when someone pointed it out to you, I don't think it was ever about you being good enough to write it. I think it was just one of the hardest things sometimes with a book is figuring out what the book actually needs, right? Like what's the story am I really telling here, right? And every book is different. Like every book is different. Every book has different needs. So for your book, it was just like, and again, probably because of you caring about this as much as you cared about it, you were like, I need to get all this in there. And the story was like, no, you just need this. The rest of this doesn't matter. You need this. But you had to get to that space when you realize that, right? I think it's one of the most common. Then you're talking to a guy that likes doing like these short little pulpy-esque kind of stories. Is like, I like these like meat and potatoes. What's the story really about? Let's tell that story, right?
Like my comment, it's like so short, so terse. So if you look at the few blurbs I've received now, I don't know if you had a chance to open it. I know I sent you the arc. And
I didn't.
I get that a lot too. I get like it's very restrained. It's very short. I also just like these really. Someone once told me that I just like people to read and feel like they've just been like punched in the gut. I just like this very sort of short. I was just kind of like, boom. That could be. That's not how I think of it.
Well, I think it's also just a product for a time. Like back in my day, shut up, Clouds. Back in my day, like I'm a big sci-fi guy. Like, I'm a big sci-fi fantasy guy. But I would read the older science fiction, and the older stuff was quick. Right? Now I'm not gonna say all of it.
Being a Canadian literature major, and it was all Alice Munro, and it was all these were short.
Yeah, because again, what mattered was just getting what was the story I'm telling on the page. Fiction, don't get me wrong. There's definitely. I'm reading Christopher Paolini right now. Like one of his sci-fi books. It's a monster. Like it's a freaking monster. It's a brick, right? I could use it as a weapon of mass destruction. It's that big of a book, right? Right. But it's right for that story. I'm not criticizing the story, but I don't necessarily always want to read something like this either. I like shorter stories. I like stuff that just really I want to get into it, tell my story, get off the page. And if you do it right, you can. It's amazing how I say this. I say this nicely. It's amazing how much you can connect with people with very little. And I think there's an art form to it. And I think we're in an age today when I have video games and I have other things that can distract me, like this magical tricorder we call a phone, right? I want something that grabs you. I want something that makes you feel. I want to hook you as quickly as possible. And I don't want this big obnoxious novel. I don't see myself now. I say that now. The next year I write a 200,000 word opus, and I'm like, I have a problem. But
Yeah.
I like my novels. I like when I write my novels to be between 50 and 70,000 words. I actually probably closer to 50 and 60,000 words because
But that's like all my novels.
yeah, because you don't need this super dense, like a lot of times you don't. And again, there are exceptions. I'm not going to say that there isn't a place. I like Brandon Sanderson, and Brandon Sanderson also makes massive bricks as weapons that could be also known as books. But I don't always need to read those. I love my Terry Pratchett's. I love my small Roger Zelazny is someone I really love as a writer because he's so succinct and says so much in so little. And I think at this point, I think a really good storytelling is what you don't say all like clearly on the page. You just put the picture in someone's head, and you can do that with very little. And again, it took me a long time to figure this stuff out. Like I said, I question my own whole wisdom thing. But what I realize is the secret to that is you figure out what you really care about in the story, and everything is about what you care about, and that's it. That is it. And then you'll take care of the rest. That care, that passion, will take care of the structure that you're creating, if that makes sense.
Well, I've always, yeah, no, it does. I've always taken it that if that line doesn't absolutely have to be there, then it has to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything that's there has to be there. And I guess I expect the reader to work. Like I want people to read between the lines. I want people maybe to take different things away from it. And you've got to work with me. It's not an Olympic sport, but it's an active, like you need to read what I'm saying and get what I'm not saying. I remember when I
Yeah.
sent to the editor, she was like, "Are you implying this, this, and this?" And I'm like, "I absolutely am." And I'm so glad, but it's completely implied. It's not there at all. And I was
No.
happy that someone picked it up. That's what I want. I think maybe people comment that way because that's not the current style. If you read the kind of New York Times bestseller, really popular fiction books, they're dense and they're telling you everything. You don't have to think a tremendous amount. You got everything, what they're wearing, how they're acting, like everything, how they look. That's kind of, I guess, what's in. But like you said, I think it also comes from that is how I saw I guess the original, obviously in Canada you read a lot of Canadian literature, and that's what we were reading like back in the day. Man, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's not anymore. So I hope you get a chance to read it. I hope you I'd love to hear what you think about it.
I promise you I'll read it. I after meeting you today, was like,
Yeah, promising.
no,
is
no,
not.
I'll read.
The second half
I have.
book, and that's supposed to come out in 2025. I'm kind of happy now that I wrote this stuff because now, right, as a writer, every time I submit an essay or anything now, I have to click, do I promise this wasn't written by AI or Chat GPT? Like at least I know that I wrote my books before. Now I don't know if you're encountering that now. Everything, if I try to submit an essay or something, it's all.
Oh no,
You confirm.
it's part.
Have you had that?
It's part of it's part of the culture now. Yes, here's how I look at it and see it today. AI has changed the game. good, bad, and
Yeah.
indifferent. I've talked about it in
Same with
other
the
podcasts.
game too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. AI is what I point out to a lot of people is AI has been writing for years, even before ChatGPT. It was in a much smaller capacity than it is right this minute. But we're still so. I feel like AI right now is in the Napster phase of its development, in the sense that we're still figuring out how we're going to use it legally, like how that looks like. That's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. I don't. They've ruled it over in the states as public domain, all of it. So that's the first step. Now, obviously, there's going to be evolutions of it accordingly, but with that first step, there's going to be. I do see AI coming for art and like being parts of art in the future. And a lot of my people listening to this are going to disagree with that, but I do see it. That said, I that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I've
I
again
don't
this,
think you can stop it. There's a lot of debate with teachers in the classroom. I say to them, you know what, maybe I should just have to teach them how to use it properly. They're going to use it. Like the students, you tell
yeah,
them to
no,
write
not
3 paragraphs, they're going to go home and use it.
but what I don't know what it's like over there teaching. But I remember again more talking to clouds back in my day bullshit. There was a lot more emphasis on teaching people to solve their own problems when I was in school than there is today. I think honestly going back to that concept, you have to evolve it for today. Like you'd have to evolve the idea of that for today, but that concept's a good idea because look, in terms of access of information, like we are like the generations that are following us have way more access to more knowledge than we've ever had in our lives. But do they have the wisdom to use it to solve their own problems? That's what needs to be taught. That's what really truly needs to be taught. It's not just the tools, but how to think about using them, how to use your imagination to enhance these things to help solve problems. Because that I think there's some real merit to that.
So if
If
you
that's
use
not there,
AI to give you a plot idea, like, what is that
yeah,
cheating? Is that bad? Is that different from paying an
I
editor? People pay me as a developmental editor, and they say, "Well, do you have ideas about how it should end?" Is that different if they pay me and I say, "Oh, you know what? I have like 2 or 3 ideas how this would end." Why is that different than
I
asking
I
ChatGPT?
just
Right? It's a
I
huge
just
debate.
so I think it's all an execution, not so much like for example, plots. There's if you took it strictly from a plot standpoint, there is no like we tell essentially the same 5 stories. All of us do.
Right.
Right? So whether we get the plot from a machine or from our own heads, that I think is not important. What's important is what we do with it. Right? And that's my opinion on it.
So when you're clicking,
I
you're submitting your short story and it says, did you use, AI oral or in part? Are you going to say, well, I did type in, some plot ending ideas, and if you
I
don't,
would
are
but
you
see
like, now they're making you click on everything, right?
I could take the cop out answer. I don't think I need to worry about that in my particular case because I never use it for those things. But I do think in terms of running scenarios of an idea down, in terms of again, I think this is all stuff that's going to be figured out as time goes on, right? It's not actually crafting the story. I don't think I like on that one. I like if you're putting a bunch of prompts together, you're not creating art, right? But if you're using the machine to go, okay, I have this idea for a story about this, narcissist. We'll just say take your novel,
This
basically,
boy who
right?
meets a girl trying to get her attention, and she likes somebody else.
Yeah,
Just like
yeah.
that.
So, right,
Sorry.
right, and And
It
the
could write
AI
that.
generates you like it
Like
could,
you,
but it would suck.
yeah.
Like it could, but it would suck, right? But that and it couldn't write a long story either. It could write a short story. It couldn't write a novel right now. And the thing of it is, right? In terms of, I'm much more. I'm less interested in where your ideas come from. I've always like I don't I never like to me, right? You, what you care about in your story, and I think this is going to be a big thing about AI generated stuff. Smart artists are going to figure out, okay, your novel, you care about this because you know how you grew up. You love the 80s were important to you. Your Jewish background's important to you, like personally, even though the idea of like mental health is important to you. You care about those things. If you
Right.
didn't, you wouldn't write that story. If an AI generated a plot for you and you didn't give a shit, story would suck balls. Whether you wrote it or the machine did it would suck balls. Because the important human element to it is, why do I care enough to write it? Right? And that's the thing, right? Like that's the real issue. Great story. Like I truly believe this. Great stories, right? Great stories come from what the author or creative cares about the most, right? I mentioned my novel. You know what it's really about? It's about that fear of falling in love. And not fear of falling in love, but also fear of falling, it's never finding that love. That's the real emotional core of the story, right?
Oh
Everything else
wow,
I'm running
I
in.
didn't get that.
No,
I
no,
didn't
no.
get that from
No, no,
Christian.
no, no,
Nope.
no, no. I haven't told you the whole story. Yeah, yeah,
Right, but
yeah,
this
yeah, 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 yeah. I just told you the basic plot, right? I didn't like, but what makes the story tick is that little nugget. That's the real
that's the thing.
nugget in the story. That's the thing. Everything else is trappings. Everything else. That's the thing. So if I don't have that thing, AI isn't going to do me a damn bit of good. But if I have that thing, maybe the AI can help me go, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Right? Those kind of things. No. No, not war. AI is love. Okay. Sure. But I mean, but the thing is, right? I look at it. I look at it like this: without an emotional core, an emotional core, there's no story, like no human
So it's
story.
like soulless writing. Just that's
Yeah,
what you'll just have like no soul
yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah. Even the most genre based like books, even the most genre based books, right? Um, the best ones have a real emotional core to them, right? They could be the tropiest things in the world, but if the author cares, you can tell,
Right.
and the
Like the
story's good.
stereotypical love triangle, like the love triangle, like really
Like
stereotypical.
yeah, you can make any story work. It doesn't matter. What matters is, does the
Yeah, I
story
agree.
does the story, do you care about the story you're telling? An AI can generate a plot all at once, right? But if the person doesn't give a shit, the story's going to suck balls. It is. It's going to
I
suck.
mean, it could be eventually like future versions will be able to imitate us so well that we'll think that's the fear, right? That's what half of this writer's strike and everything is about. That they'll
No. Well,
imitate us so well that it seems real to us.
it may be, but okay. At that point, though, the question is, if okay, say the machine has an emotional core, its own emotional core at some point down in the future. Because in order to do that, in order to master those little nuances, right, the machine is going to have to, on some level, get human emotion. I don't know if that's possible, but let's say for the sake of argument, it is. Okay.
I have no idea.
Well, yeah, no, I don't either, right? So let's just say for the sake of argument, it is. Then, okay, when does the machine? So now maybe the machine develops its own consciousness, and this creates a nice little mind warp. If the machine can do it to that degree well, is the machine itself a sentient being? And if so, does it get all the rights to everything it just wrote? And the fact that it can write so fast, because the AI's advantage is speed. As the time, it has time, like it has more time. It has more time to focus on things than we do because of all the complex operations we do. So I look at that and I go to myself, we're gonna. I mean, there are conundrums, but I'm honestly not like, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not really worried about AI right now because
That's really interesting. Because I have so many writers who are so worried about AI.
I'm not, because I know what AI can do well right now and what it can't do well right now. And the truth of the matter is, like, in terms of commercials, certain jobs will disappear. Yeah, certain press releases, for example. Press releases are about as soulless as you can get. Like, let's be honest, they are. You make an AI prompt that. No,
it's a formula.
They're incredibly formulaic. It's a formula without emotion. Like anything like that is going to disappear. But telling stories never will disappear, right? And down the road, maybe when we figure this all out, who knows? Maybe we find a way to evolve to tell better stories with AI. And then maybe it's about percentage of AI use more so than that's kind of where I see it going ultimately. I don't know. Like I choose to be the optimist about this kind of thing. Now, does that mean that I think, like, are we going to have a big traditional publishing deals? Or are we going to have Hollywood trying to cut out people so they can? Yeah, that's always been the case, right? That has always been the case, and that was why these strikes happened. Was so it would keep those people honest, which I'm all for. But at the end of the day, as it stands right now, um, you cannot replace the human spirit with machine. Not yet, anyway. So until that day comes, I'm not going to worry. And if that does happen, but if say that does happen, tell you what, I'm going to go fishing somewhere. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I'm going to go in my little fishing boat, and I'm not going to worry about fuck all at that point. Because at that point, my job is done. I'm gonna go into the next phase of my career, which says I fish and drink and fish and not worry again. All right, and that is it. Right. I'm not like, I'm too old.
It's gonna be perpetual summer. The boats will never be frozen. You're just gonna fish.
Yeah,
exactly. Freezes up. You keep sailing.
That's damn right. Damn right. Yeah, exactly. I can't, like, going back full circle, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. You can only worry about what you can control. That's it. I'm going to.
As a writer, your feel for it, because I see a lot of fear on, certainly in online that I'm on, and I see it with the magazines where, I want to submit an essay, it's just like click, click, click. I promise, I swear, this. To me, that's like, maybe it's coming from their side from integrity, but there's certainly some fear there. If you
integrity,
maybe they
fear,
want to
but
make
also,
sure that, like, when it says Gila Green, it's really Gila Green. I get that. There's maybe a certain amount of integrity or authenticity they want if they accept your work, but
also,
I was just wanting to take your take on it.
But also remember, it was just all AI was rules public domain, which means no one can make money off it if it is AI. So there's also a business element to it as well. Like the business does matter, and so I look at it kind of like, okay, I'm the wrong guy to talk about with fear. I'm not saying I'm not. There aren't things that scare me, but I learned this a long time ago. You can't let fear rule your actions. If you do, it destroys you. Right? Life is, look. Me and you are not walking away. Now you have a Jewish background. I don't know if you're a practicing Jew or not. If you are, you know that you're going to go to God at some point. You're going to say, "Hey, God, this is what I did." But until you get to that point, right? You're here. One day you're not going to be here. Until in between, the only thing you can really dictate is how you approach the story of the day. So I'm an optimist by default, because I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know what real is, and cynicism, as far as I can tell, is useless. right? So
I think that's great.
yeah.
That's really great. Nice. Thank you.
So yeah, and remember, what you do matters. And congratulations on everything you've done.
Thank you. And yeah, are you gonna like send me a link to this or?
Yeah, so we're not quite. I'm going to
I
send you a
don't
link to this. So we got to do the proper thing here. Okay, this is the proper thing. You got to plug a book, and you got to plug where people can find you.
plug my book. Yeah, you know, that's my 5th book, and I'm still like, I wish I'd never had to market or plug books, right? Because the fun part is writing the book, not selling the book. But here we go. So, With a Good is my 5th book. It's coming out of Montreal with AOS Publishing. August 18th. There's already a link available for pre-order. I'm really excited about it. I think it's a good read. And there's another one following in 2025 called The Inheritance with the same publisher. So those will be my 5th and 6th books.
And how can people find you?
Thank you. Oh, and you can find me at my website at Gila Green Writes.
GilaGreenWrites.com.
I also recently started a cooking TikTok on a TikTok
Nice.
a few weeks ago. Because I just needed a break from all the intensity of writing. Gila with 1 L, just 1 L.
Oh, okay. My bad.
No, you did really well. People usually really trip over it for quite a while. Yeah, I've been starting some cooking TikToks to just do another kind of area of creativity in my brain.
Oh, geez, I screwed up again.
No, that's good. Oh, there's
no, I screwed up. I see. They gave me they gave me an award for this. Once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away. There we go. This is the right one.
That's good. Yeah,
all right.
Fun, and thank you. And I just have to say that I just hope the whole world enters a peaceful era as soon as possible, whether it's Ukraine or Israel or anywhere. We just have to get there somehow, hopefully.
Well, one day we'll all make nice and have lots of babies. But until then,
I settled for stop killing each other. We don't even have to be that nice. We just have to stop.
I look at it this way: if we're always going to be a little aggressive, we might as well use it in a way that's at least fun. That's me, right? That's me. But for everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. My next guest will be Christy Shin. That'll be this afternoon, actually. But in the meantime, I want to thank Gila for coming on, having a wonderful conversation from across the pond. My best to you in your current situation. I know it will get better, but until then, take care of yourself. And to everybody watching, have yourself a wonderful time.